And welcome to The View from the Top. Hi to Ray. We've got Ray Abbott in the house. Who else have we got out there? I can see Pankaj is backstage. Hi to Scott Adderman from sunny Atlanta. We got Emily Rust has joined. She's coming forward. She's looking forward to the conversation. We've got a really, really important subject today. We're going to be talking about project mobility. So not when you move one person to a location, but when you're moving a group of people. So group moves, project mobility, call it what you will. It's a really, really important subject. It's especially important if you're an industry that moves a lot of people, say, I don't know, engineering or infrastructure or energy or professional services, or, I mean, so many people move, groups of people. We've seen Tyler come in. We got Desiree from Atlanta. We got Jake Medina, a previous guest on the show from San Diego. People coming in from all over the world. It's just wonderful to see you. Now, you know how it works, everybody. Please join the conversation. Write in the comments box. A lot of you are doing it already. Tell us who you are, where you are. Tell us all about, you know, what's going on in your world, because that's the only way that we know who's here. But also it's the only way that you know who else is here. We can get those side conversations going on. It's such an important subject today. But also you can get your credits. So you might want CPE credits from Worldwide ERC. So they're up there, your GMS and your CRP credits. You might want credits from SHRM or from HRCI. Many thanks to our good friends at Rocket Mortgage for providing those. I'll leave those up there for a moment or two so that you can just see and get the code that you need. You can either screenshot it or get your camera out and take a photo or just jot down the number. But we'll leave that up there for a few moments. Now, today we're talking about project mobility, which, as I said, is a really important subject. Next week, I think we're talking about a really, really important subject, one that we've not talked about before. And to be honest, I've been involved with conferences and running conferences in mobility for God knows how many years. And I don't think it's actually a subject that's ever been properly discussed. So the subject we're doing next week is divorce and the expat. I know we had Valentine's Day a couple of weeks ago, but life moves on. We're going to be talking about what happens when a family splits up whilst on assignment, whilst they're working abroad. What are the implications? What are the implications, the financial implications, the custody implications, the jurisdictional implications, the child abduction implications? It's a huge, huge subject. And I'm super delighted that next week, apart from our normal immigration and tax segment, we've got some leading international divorce lawyers, family lawyers, talking to us about that. So a really, really important subject next week. And I do urge you all to tune in and watch that. Anyway, what's been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility over the last 7 days? Well, we always like to have a little bit of breaking news. So here we go. This is what's been going on in our industry over the last 7 days. And if you see somebody in the video that you see has been promoted or has got a new job and you want to congratulate them, then please do hit that heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's see what's been happening in terms of our breaking news. So there we have it. A lot of promotions, a lot of new jobs. Congratulations to everybody who's been promoted and got a new job. Also, lots of job opportunities out there. So good luck for everybody who's job hunting. Now, if you are looking to advertise a job, you've got somebody, you've got a place, a role that you want to get out there in the industry, then let us know and we'll try and put you in the breaking news feature next week. And also, if you've been promoted or got a new job and you want to share the good news with the industry, again, let us know and we'll try and put it out there in the video. We're now going to move on to talk about immigration, and we're going to be talking about group moves, about project mobility from an immigration perspective. Now, normally, of course, our very, very special guest is the wonderful Julia Onslow-Cole. She cannot be with us today because she's actually mid-air on a flight somewhere, so she can't join us. But I'm super delighted that we do have to join us her colleague, her fellow partner, Charlotte Wills from Fragment. So please, everybody, let's be nice to Charlotte Wills and give her a huge, huge welcome to The View from the Top. So hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's give a big View from the Top welcome to Charlotte Wills.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Charlotte, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on The View from the Top.
It's great to be here.
Excited. And what a topic we're talking about today. So I know you've only got limited time, so we're not going to eat into us. Tell us all about project mobility, group moves from an immigration perspective.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me. Project mobility, a great topic today. Large scale project moves are something we see very frequently. Immigration is obviously such a key part of that, and we know it can cause the most stress, especially for those urgent projects. Immigration can often be the last thing on the planning list, really, that the business considers. But we know in the mobility world, it's often one of the most vital. So, as you mentioned earlier, Brian, for IT companies, energy, oil and gas, consulting, engineering, it's just so important to get right because it's a large part of what they do. And I think we're seeing some really exciting examples of this at the moment. So a lot of companies are moving groups of people into France ahead of the Olympics this summer. And a big shout out to my colleagues, Sylvain Garguillo and Geraldine Renaudier in our Paris office, which are supporting with those. So really exciting.
Gosh, Olympics just around the corner. Who'd have thought?
Exactly, I know. So there are three key themes I kind of wanted to talk about today on the project mobility topic. The first is workforce planning. So we know this is important. Strong workforce planning helps you to respond rapidly. It's important from an EVP point of view. And what that is, I guess, is ensuring that your organization has the right people, the right skills, in the right places at the right time. Sounds simple, not always so simple in reality. Graduate populations we see are a good example of this. Typically, a young demographic. They have multinational rotations. Often, they go to company HQ for kind of their initiation. So we see bulk business visitor moves there, and it's important to have a good first impression for those cohorts. So I guess don't be afraid to enlist the support of a subject matter expert. One of my fantastic colleagues, Jen Fackman, the Nomadic team, they have worked with a client on just this, and in the space of a year, they have turned their visa approval rates from around 58% up to over 90%, which is really just brilliant. And the outcome of that really has positive effects for everyone involved. So workforce planning, really important. Theme number 2, travel ready populations. So data is key, and I'm sure that will be a recurring theme of today's session. So pre-identify who you can move quickly and where. Speed, we know, is often really important with group moves, and doing that preparation can help you support that kind of agile decision making that's often needed. We know that that's going to be even more important with the increasing digitization of borders we're seeing. So ETA in the UK, ETIAS in Europe, ESTA in the US, of course. So keeping track who has the right permissions to facilitate that quick travel. It will be a challenge, but it's really important. And then the final theme around this topic we see is government concessions. So proactively talking with officials, liaising with authorities, look to obtain facilitations for big group moves. It can be done. We do see it. So we've seen concessions for large groups come to open a flagship store for a large IT company here in the UK, concessions for cohorts of around 100 people coming to work on big projects. And those concessions can really help facilitate quicker, smoother travel, and more success stories, really. So I know we've barely scratched the surface here today, Brian. I think we could talk on this topic all day. And I know you and I were saying earlier before the session, moving groups in times of crisis is another really fascinating discussion that we could have, hopefully perhaps for another day.
We will. That's my guarantee to you and to our viewers. We will do a show on moving groups of people in crisis situations sometime later in the year. That's a great shout. We're definitely going to do that. So, Charlotte, amazing update there. Really helpful, useful information there. We're going to move on now. So thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to introduce one of our change makers. We are super delighted. We've got Darby Long from Connexus Med Staff with us. So we're going to bring her on. So everybody, big thank you to Charlotte Wills. Big welcome to Darby Long. And as I've said it before, I'll say it again. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say goodbye to Charlotte and bring Darby onto the show.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, wasn't Charlotte a star on the immigration segment? So
she was amazing. I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Oh, there's so much more. Now, Darby, tell us about yourself. Now, how did you get into this wonderful world of global mobility?
Yes, so I actually fell into it. I was in a previous role that wasn't specifically mobility based, but I was lucky enough to be able to collaborate with the mobility team, and I knew it was what I wanted to do. So I followed my passion and jumped in head first and never looked back.
Excellent. And tell us about Connexus Med Staff.
Awesome. So Connexus Med Staff is an amazing organization. We match healthcare professionals internationally with life-changing careers in the US. We also partner with domestic students who are here on international visas. And it's just all around such a wonderful organization because they're so focused on the healthcare professional experience and having them have a successful life in the US, while also supporting our staffing shortages in the medical field here. So it's absolutely amazing. I am so lucky to be a part of the team at Connexus.
And how many people do you tend to move, and from what countries?
Yes, so we are all over. We've expanded. We've recently dived into a new area with our NCLEX sponsorship program, which is a certification for registered nurses to work in the United States. So obviously retrogression, and everyone on this call knows a little about some immigration limitations recently. So this is a way for us to recruit healthcare professionals earlier in the process by helping them get this certification. So it's changed our demographic. So we recruit from all over. We have a strong Filipino population. We have many countries in Africa. We have healthcare professionals from Jamaica. So we are expanding, and we don't want to have any limits on places that we're finding healthcare professionals that want to come to the US.
Well, kudos for you for helping out getting healthcare professionals into the country. And roughly how many people do you move a year?
It depends, a couple hundred typically, and those can be, and we're looking for those numbers to grow significantly with immigration things changing, and also our NCLEX sponsorship program.
Okay. Now, the reason you're here, of course, is you're one of our wonderful change makers. So tell me, what attracted you to being a change maker, and what would you say in terms of recommending it to other people?
Yes, it's amazing. I was fortunate enough, I'm in the Houston area, and I was invited to a luncheon with Miss Kara Butler. And when she spoke about the program, I just thought it was wonderful. And everybody's so welcoming. If you are looking for an opportunity to network and find out more information and educate yourself, join. It's a welcoming group of people and just a plethora of information across different industries, and everybody is so willing to share. It's been a great opportunity for me in the short period of time that I've been involved. Also,
just to let people know, I mean, there's no charge for being a change maker. In fact, quite the opposite is that we Benivo make a donation to a charity of your choice. So tell us about the charity that you chose.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited to share about My Refuge House. It's an organization that is in Cebu, Philippines, which is where a lot of our healthcare professionals come from. And this was a perfect opportunity that I saw because we do care about the home countries that our healthcare professionals are coming from. They often have families still there, friends there. So it's a wonderful way to give back to those communities. And what My Refuge House does is it helps support families and individuals who have been victimized by human trafficking. And it's a very long-term holistic approach, which I found to be so helpful. It's not just a temporary help or a Band-Aid. They're really getting into the communities and looking at the families, helping these victims get their high school diplomas, become successful. So a long journey, a strong partnership, and I'm so excited. If anyone has not heard of the organization, they have a Facebook page, they have a LinkedIn. I strongly encourage you to look into it. It's wonderful. And
Okay.
I'm so grateful for Benivo for helping support through the change makers.
Well, we're just delighted to have you as a change maker. And if we can help support your charity and the charities that other change makers support, then that's just a win-win for everybody. So, Darby, thank you so much for being on the show, telling us a bit about your charity and about Connexus Med staff. If anybody else would like to be a change maker, and you're running a corporate mobility program, then please do reach out to our wonderful producer Tally, who also runs the Change Maker Network. So we're now going to move on, and we're going to tell you a little bit about where you can find and see Benivo over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to bring onto the stage the wonderful, wonderful Beth Nielsen. So everybody, let's say a big thank you to Darby Long, a big welcome to Beth Nielsen, and you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's move on to meet Beth Nielsen. Hey, Beth.
Hello.
We haven't seen you on the show for a while. Great to see you.
It's lovely to see you. It's great to be back.
Excellent. So tell us, what are you going to tell us about today?
Just a couple of updates today. The first is actually about myself and Tom, who's going to be on the show in a moment. We are both heading off to Amsterdam for the FEM event, and we're arriving on the... I'm so excited. I love going to Amsterdam. Any excuse, it's going to be so much fun. We're actually arriving a little bit early. So if you're around, if you're a corporate and you're around on the Thursday and you'd like to come to our Tech Connect event, then we'd love to see you there. I think Tally's going to put a link up of how to sign up. And of course, we'd love to see you on the Friday at the event itself as well. And if you'd like to meet up, there's another link just to let me know so I can make sure that I make time to speak with you while we're there. The second thing is actually my colleagues over in the US. So Eric, Kennedy and Cara are going to be in Dallas on the 25th of April at the GME event. They are doing a panel and a breakout session.
Yeah.
They're such fantastic events. It's such a great networking opportunity and really to hear about what's going on in the industry. They're going to be talking about high touch support, meeting advanced technology. So obviously something very close to Benivo's heart, and doing a breakout session, seizing control, navigating proactive solutions in global mobility. I think it's going to be great.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to be moving on now. We're going to be talking about project mobility, group moves. It's such an important subject. So, I see Harvey is going to be meeting you in Amsterdam. I see. So that's great. So, yeah, there's going to be. It's always a good event. There'll be loads and loads of people there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of time to, catch up with people there and find out what's going on. Anyway, so we're going to move on now to our main subject. We're going to be talking about project mobility. I'm super delighted. We've got in the green room with us, we've got Pankaj, Bhatia and Tom Pinfield-Wells, and they're going to be talking us through what is the issue in terms of managing groups of people and also talking through a solution. So everybody, you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say goodbye to Beth. Wish you all the best in Amsterdam, and welcome to the stage, Pankaj and Tom.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, good to see you, Tom. Good to see you, Pankaj.
Hi.
So I'm actually I don't know why I'm so excited about this subject, but I think it is such an important subject. And I know it's the cause of so many headaches in the past. And it's also, there's a nice solution out there. But let's just start at the beginning, Pankaj, and maybe I'll start with you. What are we talking about? What is project mobility? Just let's start defining our terms.
Right. So in terms of very simple definition, Brian, I would say project mobility involves a large volume of moves which happens spread over a longer period of time. So it could be in some cases extended to 2, 3, even 4, 5 years as well. So like I said, it's a group of people who would be moving on a project. Now, these projects could be either internal projects, which means that if a client is there who are sending people, they could be working within the particular organization, servicing within the organization, or they could be also working for an external client as well. So, it could be internal or external moves, which may be there. In terms of the different industries that we've seen, I think like you were kind of mentioning earlier, we've seen that in all kinds of industries, starting from IT, infrastructure, oil and gas, basically across, I would say, the energy sector. Aeronautics and defense is another big industry that we've seen kind of, using the project move. Engineering folks as well. In terms of certain specific, I would say, features of these moves, so you could have folks who are moving from one particular location going into many other locations, or people coming from different locations moving into a specified location. We may have a situation where it could be just the employees of a particular organization who may be working on a project, or the organization may even use external parties like contractors, etc., to work on those particular projects. In terms of the locations, again, it could be all kind of wide locations. It could be, for example, in some cases we've seen people working and getting deployed on oil rigs, remote sites, campsite, accommodations, etc. Even very dangerous locations as well. Especially we've seen that for some of our clients in the aero and defense sector. I think last point around this project is, I would say, more in terms of the skills of these people. So these are more engineering folks who are there, blue-collared workers who would typically kind of be moving.
Okay, so I've got it. So, I mean, in fact, I know Charlotte gave one example earlier. I mean, we got the Paris Olympics coming up. So all sorts of people going in there to building the infrastructure. You might get that with some big consulting project, some IT or tech consultancy, some professional services firm working on a large project in a country. I mean, in your experience, what size are these moves in terms of the number of people? What's the sort of range of the number of people for what you might consider a typical group move or project move?
It could be anything, Brian, from maybe like 30, 40 people going up to the thousands of moves. So, for example, for one particular client, we see that number actually is in thousands of cases, etc. So it could vary quite a lot in terms of the kind of industry, etc., that is moving the people.
Yeah, and I can see the problem because you don't want to just sort of repeat exactly the same thing for every single person moving. So talk us through, hopefully we understand now what we're talking about. What is project mobility? What is a group move? But talk us through what are the problems? What are the issues and challenges that companies face when they are handling a move of, say, 50 people or even 500 people at a time?
I would say one problem which is there and which I think perhaps impacts all the folks on the call or who handle project mobility is the access to the data, right? So typically in a lot of these cases, the projects which are going on are business driven, right? So there could be a lot of variables in terms of the contracting which is happening, the value of the projects, etc., which are there, the time frame, the kind of resources which are needed, the home host location which I talked about. Now, the challenge typically which happens is that while these discussions happen, and maybe you may be submitting external bids, etc., as well, the mobility team may not have access to all of that information, or they may be brought into the picture much later on, by which time, perhaps some of the damage has been done, which I will kind of talk about. The data, like I said, is scattered across the different teams. Historically, there was no single system to manage this process. Things were happening through emails, things were happening through spreadsheets, etc., which were there. Specifically, this was kind of dependent a lot on the resources who were managing the process, right? So it was very person dependent. So if a particular individual who was managing the project for a few months suddenly leaves, and then you will be in a position where you do not have any access to the data, you don't know what has happened, etc., right? So like I said, there was very little or no use of technology as part of the overall process.
And I suppose what you get is if you've got two projects going on in a company, one person's doing, the other one somebody else is doing, they might be doing it on spreadsheets. It might be, first of all, reinventing the wheel, creating a new spreadsheet, but also doing it completely differently.
And imagine that they expect updates in terms of what's happening for their particular project, how many resources are there, what is the status of each of those folks. So the mobility team was ultimately doing a lot of coordination, trying to get that information together, and that's the only thing that they were doing was around the admin stuff, etc., trying to provide those updates, etc., right? The other challenges is around cost as well, right? Because if you are talking about so many variables which are involved, the compliance cost, etc., which is involved, that's kind of challenging, especially if the projects are running for months and years, etc. It's very difficult to understand what that overall cost would be, especially if you're putting in a bid, right? You're putting in a bid with the expectation that you're going to be getting money, you're going to be making money. But if you don't know what your initial cost is going to be, you kind of start off on a wrong foot right up front as well, right? So yeah,
but it sounds chaotic. I mean, it sounds disorganized. It sounds, and that's best in the world. In fact, there's a question that's just come in from Javier. Let's just pull that one up for you, Pankaj, and then maybe we'll start moving on to the solution. He says this: in your experience, how planned do you find corporates are for working on such large number of moves, especially when you're talking about over 100 moves, which are specific to a project? So again, this gets back to what companies are doing right here, right now. If you had to have a spectrum of incredibly organized to terribly disorganized, where would you say, being honest, a lot of companies are at the moment for large moves?
I would say the level of maturity differs significantly. I think the organizations which have been doing this for a longer period of time have managed to kind of scale up in terms of the level of maturity, etc. But yeah, to your question, Brian, I would say on an average, I would still say it's like more like a 4 or a 5, right? There's so much which is happening in this space, of course, with AI, ChatGPT, etc., technology, etc., which is there, but not many organizations are actually there. They're still kind of, just moving slowly away from the spreadsheets and to some bit of automation, etc.
And there's also a bit of expectation management in there, because if you are in a large organization and you've done a group move before, then people are going to expect you to do it very well. And you might find actually there's a lot of reinventing because there are different people in your team or something slightly different. So it is a question of how you set. So maybe let me bring you into the conversation, Tom. So we've talked a bit about the problem. Let's talk a little bit about what the solution might be and link that back to some of the challenges that Pankaj has talked about.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'll do as I go through, I'll share my screen and walk through the project's functionality on Benivo, because I think to also tie on to the question that was raised there, it's not a case of people not trying to be organized and trying to proactively plan. It's that this data and this information is scattered over all sorts of different places. So people are being really restricted by, first off, just not being able to access something in a single place. So if I share my screen.
Sure. Actually, before we do, I think there's a comment here. Let's just take from Monica. She says, consistency and sharing the resources is always a challenge running such projects, but also timely communication, especially when things change. I mean, that goes back down to expectation management. And just whilst you're sharing your screen, Tom, Pankaj, do you want to sort of come in on that?
Yes, I think in terms of the things which are changing, especially I think the earlier discussion that we were having around immigration processes, etc. Right? I think that's one of the challenges that we've seen, which is very kind of variable, and especially with the current geopolitical situation, we've seen things change quite a lot, right? So you don't want the team to be spending time in providing updates there. I think typically, again, going back to the technology, right? You want to have APIs which are available, real-time updates which are available. You don't want the information to first come to the mobility team, who are then relaying it to the business. There's so much of time lost in the process, right? So how do you make that information available to the stakeholders more on a real-time basis?
Yeah, and there's all sorts of issues. I mean, we've talked about, obviously, there's immigration, visa aspects. There's accommodation aspects as well. You're moving a lot of people into a location. You know, you may find it's hard to actually get the property you want, especially without moving the market. So there's all sorts of issues there. So Tom, let's start looking at this from, I'll share your screen here. Let's pull this one up. Okay, so Tom, tell us what we're looking at and just talk us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so what we're looking at the moment is simply a view of all of our current in-progress projects. So all of the projects that we've created and added onto the Benivo platform, stored and saved in a consistent manner. So to Pankaj's point, about different ways of tracking things, it's giving a simple, clear view of all of the projects that we have created in the system that are either in preparation, underway, perhaps at a bid stage, and crucially giving the ability to add a new project. So if I kind of take us through the journey of getting a project initially created, stored, getting things assessed, and we can sort of walk through the journey as we go.
And this is a demo platform. This is Stark Industries, which is the Benivo demo platform.
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking at some demo projects, and the first thing that we need to make sure we're doing as we're collecting data is making sure it's consistent and making sure that everyone is understanding the terminology in the same way. So one way that we do that is by providing tooltips against some of the different sections here to make sure that everyone that is coming into this tool is providing the right sort of information against these topics. There's not confused information across areas, because ultimately, like Pankaj mentioned, some of these projects and the life cycle of these projects can be over months, often years. So it will be usually different team members, potentially from different teams, that are coming in and taking over different stages of this process. So we need to make sure that everyone, first off, is clear on the terminology and the language that we're using. So as someone's coming in, they're giving a project a name, describing what it is, adding some of those estimated start dates, and they will also add things like the location. So like Pankaj said as well, sometimes a project will be in one specific country. Sometimes a project will be split across multiple locations. So we're giving the ability to collect that in different ways as needed. But then also importantly, we would add the project contacts. So some parts might be done by a projects team, some parts might be done later on by the global mobility team. But what we want to do is make sure that those team members have visibility over it from the beginning, and also where needed, they're notified about particular milestones being hit, or when someone has been added onto a project, when a status has changed on a project. So making sure people are getting the information in the right moment. And to reflect and show you how a completed project looks, I'm just going to go into an example version of one that's already been filled out across these different areas. So we can see across those 4 sections that we mentioned about the initial project details, we also have a section on project assessment. So this is an important one that I want to dive into. But first of all, what we're really looking to do here is being able to give a lens to our assignments filtered through a specific project. So we've made it really easy to add people to a specific project. So we can see in this example, we've just started it, we've created someone, we've added our first employee, and we need to add another employee to our project and tag them against that specific one. So I'm just going to add my creatively named project employee to the project and just confirm that I'm adding that assignment. And what that's doing is across the different reports, which we'll also dive into in a moment, we're able to then drill down, filter by employees that are registered and tagged to this specific project. So one of the key things that will need to be done in advance of a project starting is to make sure that all of the actions that will need to be taken with regards to that project. So when it comes to compliance actions like immigration, like we've already spoken about, any other compliance actions that might need to be taken, we have given the functionality to be able to actually request a project assessment. So by a project assessment, what I mean here is we're able to integrate with compliance vendors who will be providing a compliance assessment of that project. So from the information that we've already collected here, we know that we're sending, say, 40 engineers to, in this example, to a wind farm for this particular client. We know the locations that are relevant to it. We know the types of employees that are going there. We know the dates. So with this information, we're able to make it really easy and also trackable on who has, on requesting that assessment, essentially. So giving it all in a single place and then being able to save that project assessment against the project documents. So something really important, and Pankaj touched on it, is because of the life cycle of a project sometimes taking a long time, if someone has left or someone's moved roles, perhaps to another team or anything like that, if there's a new stakeholder that's taking over, we want to be able to give them instant access to all the details that they need without having to ping a colleague to search through their inbox for something that they had requested 6 months ago, or even worse, if that person has left, really be in the dark about what's happened before, potentially repeating things they've already done, which obviously has a cost impact as well as a time impact. So let
me just take that off screen for a moment. And I just want to pick up on some of the comments that have been made and just get your comments on them. So we've got this one here from Eric Halverson. He said it's essential, centralized data, centralized coordination with the appropriate level of centralized authority. So what would be your comments on that, and how does this solution help deal with some of those issues?
Yeah, I think the centralization, and it's making sure that the right team members have access to the data at the touch of a button, but also that only the people that should see it, because there's also a governance aspect here, and there's financial information, there's compliance information, and we have the capabilities here to only show what team members need to see. Because it might be, for instance, that the projects team that initially set up the project in the system, they needed to log the information there, and they also need some visibility on whether things are in motion, whether things are ready for that project. But we don't necessarily want to give them access and the ability to take steps like initiating vendor services themselves, for instance, because that might be more on the global mobility team's remit. So it's those types of things that we want to consider there, I think. And
bringing Pankaj back into the conversation, a comment from Monica, again, interested to know how this sort of tool or good process generally helps. She says, if mobility is involved in early planning stages, we can support risk assessment and work the solutions into the plan.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the key takeaway of what I would say, Brian, because unless we are involved upfront, like I said, I think we'll end up in a situation where the business have committed on getting resources into the host location ahead of what they could actually do. There'll be a lot of expectation mismatch which would be there. I talked about the cost aspect as well. If you don't plan properly, if you are not aware of all the cost involved, you end up in a situation where you're kind of not able to even recover your costs, ending up in a loss kind of a situation. So it's very key to kind of get involved in that process way ahead. And I think it's very important for the business to actually see what value you are bringing onto the table, right? It's not the administrative task, etc. It's how you manage the full end-to-end piece around all the aspects, etc. That's what the business needs to realize there.
And let me pick up then another comment from Merrily. It's quite a long one. I'll just put that up there. She says, often miss opportunities for cost savings in advanced planning and working with on-the-ground vendor experts for immigration and tax, since often local governments may help provide effective setups and special tax concessions for such incoming group moves and projects. Rewrite of policies or other documents may be needed for proper structure. So again, getting all about being in advance and seeing what you can do. And then another comment that's come in here from Jeremy Chanda, and he said, planning and the ability to build robust processes is critical. Expect the unexpected and be ready to adapt quickly to all situations. Brian previously shared a great expression used by his father about how men make plans. Yes, I did, Jeremy. I've remembered what you're referring to there. My father's line was, how do you make God laugh? And the answer is, tell him what you're doing tomorrow. So how do we hopefully not make God laugh when we're managing our group moves? Pankaj, again, hopefully this sort of stuff actually helps you plan effectively in advance.
Right. And I think the earlier point around the planning, Brian, which was there, right? So we didn't kind of touch upon that. But yeah, there are certain, for example, tax treaties which are available that based on the duration of stay, maybe some people may not be taxable, so you can plan around that. There are certain specific incentives which are available to certain industries. So for example, there is what is called as a SOFA agreement, which is special forces agreement, which is applicable based on for especially A&D, aeronautics and defense kind of industries, etc. So certainly, those are the things which can be looked at upfront when you are in the planning phase.
Okay. Now, Tom, I just want to go back. Did we finish the demo? Was there some more you wanted to show us there?
So there's definitely some more cool stuff to see. I think so far we've seen the...
Shall I pull the screen back up then?
Put me back up and we can look at the even more exciting stuff.
Oh, hang on. I've done wrong. Bear with me. I am. Amateur hour here on View from the Top. There we go. But saved by Tally, my producer, in the background, putting the screen up for me because I failed miserably. So, Tom, okay, let's carry on with the demo. Tell us what we're looking at now.
Yeah, so we're talking about planning ahead there, and what we've looked at so far is really getting over that first hurdle, which is keeping data in a single place and having that single source of truth. But the coolest part about doing that isn't just that we can go in and see things on a case-by-case basis, look at a particular project and look at the status of things there, but it's also that we've got that data saved in the system to be able to access some really cool reporting and analytics to help us plan, whether it comes to costs, when it comes to compliance, and to really benefit from having that data in the system. Because when it comes to finance, for instance, we've got all of that cost data that we've saved there from each project in terms of the estimated spend that we might have anticipated from that project concept assessment. It might have told us that for all of these types of moves, we're going to need visas, we're going to need all of these other types of services that are going to cost. And we can start to then connect that with the cost estimate tool to get a cost estimate for that specific project and kind of look at things in more of a bulk fashion, rather than looking at each individual employee on a case-by-case basis, which obviously is also more efficient because we're able to look at things in one go and then scale down and zoom in on a case-by-case basis. So it's things like as well being able to plan effectively with your team's time and your project team's time when it comes to looking at when our anticipated start dates of specific projects are, when we're anticipating a spike in spend in regards to preparing for a specific project, or even things like what ones are coming up, what's the current status in the moment of current projects that are in progress. But most importantly, I think there was a question, or we touched on it a little bit earlier before, and one of the biggest challenges that we see from clients that we speak to is making sure ultimately that services like immigration are ready and everyone that is going on this project is compliant and ready to go, and we're not going to see delays. So what we can do there is actually zoom in to a specific employee. And I've got a couple of examples. Because we can so easily navigate into the particular employees' moves, assignments, then we can click straight into them. And from those reports, we're able to see from dashboards and widgets and things, which people might be at risk, and then go very easily into a case and see, for instance, that for my project employee 1, we can go and see that they've got their immigration services underway, but actually it's just stuck at a state of initiation. So I've come in here and I'm thinking, oh, my employee's on track, and we can see that there's a flag here. We know that there's going to be an issue that we're going to have to follow up on. Whereas on my other case, my other employee, we can see that they have their services initiated. If I go on to my project employee 2, and we can see that the service has actually been completed for visa. So it's just a quick way of navigating to these specific places and making sure that we're being more proactive with our approach to making sure everyone's compliant, and also being able to plan in a much more proactive fashion with the different analytics that we've got available there.
Okay, so that's the demo. Is there more to that, or I'll take that off? Right.
No, yeah, we can take that off now. And we can.
So Tom, that's really interesting. So I mean, I think we were talking earlier, and you referred to it as a single source of truth, which I thought was a very intriguing phrase. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the consistency point before. If we're saving things in spreadsheets or in different internal files or folders, then different team members might have had different ways of saving information, taking their own actions. They might be working in their own slightly different way. Perhaps it's got them results in the past, but then when we're trying to make things consistent and come up with a clear process for things, ultimately being able to access the data in a single place, following the same processes, we know helps so much to be prepared and planned for. Because if we're not clear on how things have been happening, how long it's going to take so much longer to find the answers that you need.
And I know, Pankaj, that bringing you into the conversation, I know that this is something that you've been working on with a number of very significant companies, and we, for obvious reasons, are not going to mention any names, but not wanting to embarrass you, I just want to put up a testimonial from one, I'm just going to say major corporate. And they said this is a game changer. For 5 years, we've asked our previous technology vendor for functionality for project mobility, and finally Benivo built it, and we love it. And that's the head of global mobility for I'll just say a major energy company. But tell us a bit, without giving anything away, Pankaj, just tell us about why it was so interesting for companies like that.
I think a lot, Brian, has to do with the problems that I mentioned, right? And at Benivo, we actually love challenges, right? So this client actually came to us saying, these are the kind of challenges that we are facing, very manual process, which is there, things happening through email, spreadsheet, etc. All those problems that I talked about, a lot of those problems I talked about were actually coming from there. And we took it as a challenge, right? So we work with the client, we work with some of the service partners to actually put that solution together, right? So not just, I would say, in terms of the relocation piece, but even the compliance piece, the end-to-end piece is what we looked at. I think one other point that I wanted to touch upon, going back to the point that Tom was making around single source of truth, right? While he talked about the internal mobility team, there are other teams within the organization who are equally interested as well. And one team that I would typically call out because of my love for tax as well is the corporate tax team. A lot of the projects that we talked about, they actually have an impact on the corporate taxation. So there is what is called as a permanent establishment. So if folks are moving and going into another country, deriving revenue, doing revenue generation activities, they create that exposure for the deploying entity, right? So the data that we talked about earlier, while we talked about more from a project perspective, from the mobility perspective, the corporate tax team are equally, or if I would say more interested in terms of how those projects are structured, how many people are going, how much revenue you are getting. If they have to do something different, they have to do the filing. Now, it shouldn't be a situation where they are using some other data they don't have access to this data, right? So that kind of goes back to the point that, like I said, Tom was mentioning around a single source of data, that they are looking at that same information as well. Not just at the time when you are actually planning to send people, but on an ongoing basis, how many people were there, how much time did they actually spend in each of those locations, what was the billing, etc., which was done, right? Another example that I want to share, Brian, is around the security assessment as well. Especially, we've seen some clients who are sending people to other countries. They typically have what we call as a red, amber, green list of countries which are identified. Green, where typically you deploy people very easily, you don't need to go through approval process. Amber, perhaps there's some bit of diligence which needs to happen, and red is where it's kind of very risky and it needs to go through a whole lot of governance process itself. So as part of this process itself, what we did was we actually aligned with the red, amber, green rating of the particular organization, so that if a new project is being requested and it's kind of looking at deploying people into a amber or a red country, it immediately triggers a notification to the internal security team so that they can go through the due diligence process. So like I said, I think ultimately, Brian, the short answer to your question was, kind of looking at it from an overall end-to-end perspective and tackling the problem was what was, the real achievement here.
Okay. And Tom, let's just put on get our crystal ball out. What's the future of this tool, Project Mobility? And actually, what's coming down the turnpike? How do we see it developing over the next few months and longer?
Yeah, so the part that I'm most excited about that I know we have on the roadmap is relating to project actions. So like some of the viewers would have seen on our employee platform, we have an actions list which helps them manage their move and get through all the tasks that they need to complete to manage a successful relocation. And it works exactly the same way for managing a project. These internal teams will need to be working to get things prepared, and using the same sort of technology, we're able to create specific actions. So for example, make sure that the compliance assessment is submitted by a certain date, because we know that it's going to take the SLA to receive the responses, say a week, 2 weeks, to make sure that's all on track. And making sure that action set is visible for anyone that has access to that given project. So then each team member can contribute. It's not just onto one person to stay on track and kind of monitor these types of things. So, and it connects back as well to the point of these things are happening over a period of months and sometimes years. So even if it is the same person that's completing these tasks and actions, I sometimes don't remember what I was working on a month ago, let alone 6 months ago. So, things move quickly, everyone's busy, and it just really helps to make sure that people aren't wasting time finding information, searching for information, remembering what was I doing there, where did I get to? It's laid out in front of you really clearly, and helping everyone that's involved.
And Pankaj, we've looked at it, if you like, from the corporate point of view. What about from the individual consultant? What's the benefit to the consultant themselves on a specific case within a project?
So I would say the key point over there, Brian, would be how we ease the process for the consultant or for the employee, right? The major frustration which has been there, not just in the project space, but even I would say in the wider mobility space, is kind of providing the same information again and again, right? So what we've tried to do as part of the implementation over here is the link to the HRS system of an organization, or it could be a Workday or a SuccessFactors or whatever may be the case. So just by entering employee ID, it would actually pull in the other demographic information of the employee, the level of the employee, the experience, etc. Because a lot of that information would be relevant from a compliance assessment that Tom spoke about, right? So in terms of immigration, that's kind of driven maybe by what level do you have, what is the salary that you may be drawing, etc. Right? So that's number one, is the integration with the HRIS system. Secondly is integrating it with a compliance tool as well, right? So again, when a person is traveling, you are putting a date in terms of the start and end date, right? You want to know what is the compliance obligation which is being created. Do you need a visa? Are you triggering any tax obligations, etc.? So because the information is kind of coming in from the HRS system, because the information is being stored at a particular place, that eases the process quite a lot for the employee, avoids the need to re-enter the same information again and again. If a person is traveling on a repeat basis, you don't need to enter the information around your previous trips, etc. Even the compliance assessment tool which is there, or whoever is making that compliance assessment, they also know your past travel which is there, possibly what the plan is for the future as well, and they can then, based on that, holistically determine the compliance obligation much better.
Okay, and we've only got a couple of minutes left, but we've talked about it from the corporate perspective, from the consultant perspective. There's one other really important perspective, actually, which is the employee experience. And maybe, Tom, can you just talk about a little bit about, I know this is mainly an employer tool, but tell us a bit about the employee experience aspect of this.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of the employee experience part is making sure, because of these tools and because of these processes, things happening behind the scenes that perhaps they're not directly contributing to or involved with, it's happening behind the scenes for them to make sure that the preparation for their projects and their assignment is on track. Because the most frustrating thing for a project employee to crop up is something getting delayed, or maybe something didn't happen on time, so actually they're not going to be able to go on that project at all. So I think that's the biggest part of it. But it's all about setting expectations, because whether it's from the global mobility side, the project team side, and also the employee, because through the functionality that we've spoken about in other sessions about giving the employee the visibility over their services through their platform as well, that's all there still. They get all of that same benefit on their platform. So it's giving them the tools at their fingertips to check and say, okay, where am I? What's still outstanding? How far away are things? Do I need to provide a document to get this carried on and get this progressed? So it's really about setting expectations and making sure things are running on track.
Okay, well, let me just bring back some of our others. We had our change maker, Darby Long. We had our immigration guru, Charlotte Wills. We had our very own Beth Nielsen, and of course, our wonderful producer, Tali Goren. So an amazing show today, really, really interesting, talking about using project mobility technology to manage projects. And I think it's just an example of how technology can give us all superpowers. And that's a theme that we'll be talking a lot more on over the coming weeks and months, the way that technology can give us all superpowers. But I do want to give a particular mention to our show next week. Next week, we're going to be covering a subject that, as far as I know, has never been covered on any stage before in our industry, which is, of course, in the expat family. It's going to be a really important subject. Urge everybody to join us. So, Darby, I just ask you, the project mobility, is that something that sort of you look at? Do you move groups of people in at times in your industry?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and Charlotte, I know from your perspective that's something that you guys at Fragment do quite a lot. Is you'll do group moves to far-flung, wonderful places.
Yes, exactly. The far-flung and weird and wonderful. Yes.
Okay, so thank you all for being on the show. We're pretty much out of time now. All that really remains for me is to say goodbye to everybody who's tuned in. It's been a fascinating show today. It's been lovely having you all in the audience. A really special thank you to our guests, to Charlotte Wills from Fragaman, to Darby Long from Connexus MedStaff, to Beth Nielsen for providing the Benivo update, and of course to our guests who are talking about project mobility, Pankaj, and to Tom. And a special thank you as ever to Tali, who tells me she's going off for a couple of days skiing. So have a wonderful, wonderful break, and you well deserve it. So everybody, this has been The View from the Top. I've been your host, Brian Friedman, and we will see you again this time next week for I won't say the wonderful subject, but the wondrous subject, the difficult, important subject of family breakdown for your assignees. If you've never thought about it, do make sure you tune in next week. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you all this time next week. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.